Okay, so we're here. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. Let's go through it. So just imports, ignore that. That's not really interesting sort of thing. This is just the setting up of the window. Then we refresh the display and run it. We've got the run here. A lot of this is just checking for things. So this is just for up and down arrow presses to check if we scroll up and down. We change our scroll offset. Then if it's not, if temp previous isn't 244, then we don't worry about it. And if temp character is 244, so temp previous is a character pressed beforehand, temp character is a character pressed currently. So this we don't have to worry about. It's only if the previous one was 244 that we worry about that, which is the command character. That's the ordinance value for that. Ordinal value, sorry. Then we check if it's 27, which is escape, and if well, we do a quick check, and if it's true, then we break. Otherwise, temp character being 8 would be the backspace key. So we're just removing it from our input string, and enter. We send it off to check for the command, and replace the input with nothing. Otherwise, we just set our temporary inputs to be we add whatever key we've pressed to temp input, and then after that cropped input is temp input but like snipped out of an area just by indexing, and then self.g input is cropped input with a bunch of stuff there, and that's just our display input. So then we have os.systemcls, which refreshes the display. We do our drawbar, we then do our refresh display, and then we set our previous to the current character. So once that's done, then we go here. This is our text wrapper. I need to clean this up because this is just a bunch of lf. There's probably a nicer way to do that with recursion or no, with looping, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. Otherwise, we do this. This is a recursive function because it's just easier to do that way, and that passes it back out to right output because you pass that into your right output to do the text wrapper. Then right output is essentially kind of a modified version of print, where if we pad it, we add a break. Padding is set to false by default, and then for I in string split. With a new line character, so we're splitting the string up on every return into its different lines, and then we're going to take those and pad those with spaces to fit, and then we're going to put those into the gtext array, which is going to be then displayed later. So then we have the add break, which just adds a break. That's just a single empty line. We have drawbar, which is to do, I'm not even going to go into this. This took me like 2 hours to do, like this little bit here. It was awful. I didn't quite understand what I was doing. Also, this is a cheat method and it's bad and it's gross, but you know what, I don't care. It's because floating point numbers are crap and computers are bad. For iron range of that, that's just us filling out the scroll bar and making sure that we fill out 3 positions, which are I-1 and I-2. And then fill the rest of that with a shaded but not full character. And then we have command check, which checks what commands we have. So if our command, the first 3 characters are say, I should actually make this like this and like this. So we add a space there, and we'll do this and this. That's fine. So yeah, these just check for say and clear, which are 2 commands that I've currently made. Then we have our quit check, which just says do you want to quit, and if it's true then we just break everything, the whole loop, the whole class loop. And then after that we have refresh display, which just fills out this display sort of framework that I've set up. A lot of this is kind of strange to look at, but don't worry about that too much. And then we just call game as G, and it runs on initialization because we have self.run here. So when we run this, we can enter a name. I'm going to do Dylan, and then we have this. Now it's not complete at all. Let me go here. It's not complete at all. I've just entered the name Dylan, but what it does have is most of this side of the screen working, and this side of the screen here has like the potential to work. So if I type here, if I go here and I type say hello world, you can see it comes out with hello world. Now that ain't too cool in itself, right? But what you have to understand is I'm not actually inputting this as terminal, I'm inputting this as MSVCRT. So I'm having to make my own input system. So this here is actually where the terminal's input would be, but I'm taking the input here. So if I say this is a long string of text, and it is long, and it is a string of text, it is long, and etc. You can see that we can scroll our text to fill more than just the bounds that we have available to us, which is really cool, and it took like 2 seconds because I set it up right. And when we hit enter, nothing happens because I didn't write say. You need to remember to do that. You always have to make sure that you hit the say command, and you can see here that we wrap our text. So I'll also show you if I have just a long string of characters like this, hit enter, maybe a few more, you can see that we actually get a hyphenated piece of text that then becomes this. So this is pretty cool. I think this is pretty cool. What else do I have to show you? Oh yeah, you can scroll up and down on here by pressing up and down arrow. So this scroll bar actually adjusts its speed to be kind of representative of any amount of text. So if I just do a bunch of say commands here, oh, I need to put in some text obviously. Say, add a space afterwards because we need to make sure that happens. If I do this, you can see that it actually scrolls a lot slower on the bar to actually account for the fact that we have a whole lot of text going past. If I continue to do this, you'll notice that potentially some of this top area will be removed because I have it capped at 100 characters. You can also see that this scrolls really slowly for the scroll bar because that's just how it works now. And it caps off just above the top on the last one empty line that's above everything. So yeah, that's how this works. For the rest of this, if I show you now, if I move back to Genie, I can show you the player, which is just this. It's just an empty class pretty much, just enough to give us some information. And you see the XYZ coordinates here. This corresponds to over here. So if we change these coordinates to 255, 99 and 101 potentially would work. So that's X, Y and Z. We can run this, enter Dylan, and you can see at the top here we have our coordinates. Oh, you have our coordinates just along the top here, which is to be represented as 255, 099 and 101. Now we do pad this with a 0 to make it work better for spacing, and it just looks nicer with the zeros than without the zeros, because otherwise you kind of lose this sort of illusion of the top edge all being there and that projected in front of it. This area here will eventually become the map. This little @ symbol will stay in the center, and then the player can move around the map. I will do a modulo function to keep the map constrained to the edges if the player moves off the edge of the map, so there won't be any blank space. They'll just kind of, the player's character will move up here instead of being directly in the center. This is all fine. I haven't sorted this out yet, but this is just a quick HUD of your stats, and this is a quick health bar as well. It hasn't been sorted yet, so nothing's functional in this sort of corner here or this map, but that's the next part of this whole project, and for the most part I'm very happy with how this has turned out. For future kind of plans and stuff, I have a couple, not too many, but I'd like to add a note to self command at least in the next little bit, just to test out saving and loading. But the note to self command it would be quite cool, because you can give a note to self, so N to S, then type your command, and inside of that you can put in a little piece of code such as !map XYZ and delta X, Y, and Z to give a snippet of the map inside of a text document, or displayed on the screen on your notes section, for example. That would be quite cool. You can also have the character names and place names, character alive or not. You can probably set objectives in the note to self. I'd quite like to have that happen. So if you wanted to, for example, obtain a bar of gold, that would be an objective you could give yourself. If you wanted to kill the Dread Pirate Leader, Silverbeard, I don't know, you could go and do that, and that would be fulfilled in the note to self section. Because I wouldn't like to have a quest structure as most games do, with sort of either the journal system or the menu with quests like Skyrim or Fallout, something like that. That isn't kind of where I'd like to go with this. It's more of a freeform sort of thing. And of course objectives can be completed, but you'd have to return to that person to actually do that. So you might want to note down the name of the current place that you're in, the name of the character that you're talking to do this. If you use !character name, where you substitute the character name for the name of the character, that might give the coordinates of the character or their house or something like that. And that would be potentially you know, an option for keeping track of things. I might also add the option to give generated note to self entries for that sort of journal system, but that's a little bit further off, and it's quite a difficult thing to do because it requires a lot of planning for all quests to have all these entries. For the moment, I'd just like to have movement, printing out of exits and features of the room, interactivity, all the stats, health bar, and that to be functional. And once that's sort of done, I'll move on to combat, because I'd quite like a Final Fantasy style system, where you have, is that Final Fantasy? It's one of them. It's where you have three front, like a front row and a back row, and then you can like position your characters, and I quite like to do that graphically within that little command line interface area here. So in here you'd have you know, 2 rows of characters, the enemy and yourself, and you can move characters back and forward. Of course they would be represented possibly just as a name inside of a box that would be shifted back and forward to kind of suggest that. But that is, I think, probably enough to kind of give an engaging battle system. And then you can say, of course, you'd have commands for it. You could say like attack James to Stephen, and James would attack Stephen, sort of thing, with his equipped weapon. Each character can have an inventory. There's a whole sort of ream of things that I'd like to include here, a whole lot of depth that I can add, but it's going to take some careful planning so that I don't just feature creep myself into never finishing it. I'd like to just take it one step at a time and finish off each sort of iteration of it before I move on to the next kind of big boom of features and stuff like that. So ideally I'd like to have this in the next few days, maybe even a couple weeks, towards the point of having some form of interactivity as a game. So you can go north and it will tell you what the room at the north is, and it will update your position on the map and represent that with an update, and it will tell you the character's stats and the current health of the character. And from within the game I can either make some sort of dev command, so I can remove amounts of health to see if it updates correctly. So 50% would be 50%, 25%, 30%, the whole thing, so I can actually see that happening, as well as modifying all the other stuff on the fly. It'd be quite nice to make dummy enemies. If I'm not going to do party-based combat, I might do single person combat, and have enemies with priority scores, or something similar to that. But to be honest, it's, you know, that's a lot to come in the future, and that's a lot of planning I need to do to make sure it all works out correctly. because I don't want to just jump into it and create something that isn't fun, because that ain't the point of this. So, you know, I can and or I have a clear command as well. So it says, why isn't the clear command working? Oh, I need to do the space afterwards. I'll modify that because that shouldn't be that way. But you can see it clears the thing, so I can say things, say more things, and then clear, and it clears it all up because I need to put the space because I was silly. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. That's kind of my thoughts on this, how we're going to go about it, as you know, just to have it working. But yeah, for the most part, I'm very happy with that. I think it really works for kind of what I'd like it to do. It's quite nice to use. I really like the feature of having the scrolling text box, so you can just fill this with spam, and you can see that it scrolls through, and allows us to have all sorts of things happen in there at an infinite length, pretty much. And then, of course, you can always backtrack. One thing that I am considering doing is having the cursor be able to move, but that's quite a lot of effort to do, and a kind of confusing thing. I don't think it's really necessary for this sort of game where it's single player, and also you're typing out commands. You're not typing long passages of text. You know, a typical command is N for north, or LK for look, or I don't know, peak. You know, that would be a command. Map, INV for inventory. You know, those sort of things where it's very quick. You're not going to have to keep readjusting. You know, your type not have to go, oh, I should edit that bit there so it sounds better. There's no reason for it. So just having it as this, I think, works quite well. And removing the bounds at the end of it, obviously, if you wanted to make a quick note of something, then you know that extra length allows for it, but it's not necessary, and it's just there if you need it, sort of thing. Obviously, if you held down the button for a very long time, you could overflow memory, but considering that it's just a few bytes each time, I'm really not too worried about that. And I might concatenate it so it's limited to like 500 characters or something. Do I mean concatenate? No, I mean truncate it until it's about 500 characters or something like that, and that would do absolutely fine for that sort of thing. But yeah, for the most part, that's pretty much it. I'm really happy with how this has gone. So yeah, I suppose that's that.